This entire series is based on New Zealand historical and current events. I've used a lot of iconic imagery from my past and most people's past, stuff that we all feel very strongly about, and sense of ownership and cultural sort of ownership, be it Māori or Pākehā, and that's what it's based on really, is just iconic themes of New Zealand. I get a lot of influences through literature, Michael King, historic, contemporary historians. I read a lot, so I get a lot of information from other people's views about how our historic events took place and currently what position that puts us in. As far as artists go, I feel strongly about McCann, Hoderi, Hammond. They're all quite strong influences. I don't know whether it shows in my work, but when I look at their work, I feel a sense of pride as a New Zealander, so I try and take that on board and portray myself in some kind of similar way. I've been working as an artist for probably around 10 years now. Started off mainly in a photographic sort of area as far as artwork was concerned, but that pretty quickly moved into a multimedia form. I found photography was a very difficult thing to try and sell to people because everybody feels they can offer the same by pushing their own finger on a button. And then I sort of, I tied a couple of my favourite pastimes into my artwork, which was hoarding and op shopping. So I managed to find a lot of material in op shops that I could reuse and beautify, which was a compliment and an achievement in myself, being able to take something that had passed its use-by date and recreate it to make somebody else want it again. I sort of feel quite strongly about the waste that we have in the world and what we create, so it's kind of nice to be able to put something back out there that's been used and passed on. I'll come up with an idea based upon an opinion generally, and trying to portray that strongly, I need to find a source of material that suits that. So generally I'll come up with the idea and then I'll travel around and try and find as many of the different materials that suit that idea and then put it together from that point. So the tin tickies and the Bambi and the bodice and the stuff that I did have cake tins, just because they're so pretty to look at as an individual item, a cake tin, they transform into a nice medium to use in a larger area, a larger mass, so cutting them down into pieces and restructuring them. They all come from a similar era, so when you look at the colourings on them, they clash very nicely, whereas if you try to put something from the 80s with something from the 60s, it doesn't work, so that's pretty much my process. I find an idea and then I search out the material and then put the two together. Okay, this piece is called Hand-Me-Downs. It's a narrative about a humorous sort of narrative about the culture and icons that we feel are owned by us and represent us inside New Zealand and outside New Zealand. The work sort of is formative on the marae with the British flag inside it, and that theory is that a customary marae today would have influences, European influences inside it, i.e. ovens or dishwashers or whatever utensils that they use. It's emblazed with the Lions insignia, which is obviously a part of small town New Zealand. That's just to represent a meeting house. You move up through the piece. The text on this part here it says Aotearoa, but it's spelt in a European form, the way that, if we broke it down into syllables, it would be spelt this particular way. And around the bumblebee, there's some text that sort of represents our slang language, which has sort of become more a wider used language than Māori or European language. Moving up through the piece, there's the four-square man. He's crowned, and that's sort of trying to say, the royalties of New Zealand, and the icons that we have as Kiwis, are special to us in that way. And then the text over the top, dunno bro, is that me as in we, or us, or them as in us? And that's just about ownership, the way we turn ownership. We sort of say, this is ours, but what we mean is, this is mine, or vice versa, So it's just about the way that we perceive each other, and it's in all its form, So we break down we break down items or icons or lands or whatever, and yeah, the basic gist of it is, you know, when we say we mean me.
Yeah, it's a combination of a couple of series which I believe all kind of tie in with each other quite nicely, all from that same 1950s New Zealand era. We have, there'll be 4 works of the commemorative series which have these circle-like shapes. So I use monuments and historic figures a lot recently, and then put them in a juxtaposition as far as backgrounds and stuff go to tell a new narrative on historic fables and, you know, offer a different perspective on them. In a kind of tongue-in-cheek way, so keeping it quite light-hearted, nothing too serious. And then there'll be also the Small Town series, which is a heavy text. Oh, it's utensils, which are from that same area too, kind of utensils that we use to build and sculpt a landscape that we're familiar with. They've all changed over the years. To begin with, there was definitely a New Zealand art influence through the likes of Hodder and McCann and the likes of. This series kind of actually comes from more of a Renaissance period, more for the compositions and the, you know, offering a dramatic light and the likes of. And some of the circle-like shapes were Renaissance themes. So that's probably the storytelling side of these newer works. So, something that's always been around is a lot of art. I mean, the family grew up with a lot of supporting public galleries around town, and we'd spend a lot of weekends out working in them. And the artist was always kind of a respected person. And then when it came to tertiary education, I did a couple of years of fine arts, and then switched over and did multimedia and graphics and all television and film production, because they're all facets of interest. I wasn't too sure about forging your way as an artist out there as far as making money goes. And then so a number of years later, after some commercial experience doing web design and graphic, took on the painting full-time, had previously been doing it in the weekends, and slowly built up a reputation and a selection of exhibitions from there. I think this is my 9th year full-time, so it gets better every year. I know you kind of get through the distribution, you get bigger profile through more people seeing your work, so it gets better and easier, and, you know, enough to keep you going. Generally still just doing acrylics on canvas, but introduce other facets every now and then. I use this, you may not be able to see that picking up there, but there's a handwritten script, which is kind of a signature thing for me. I like the way that it picks up in certain gradients, so it becomes a part of the picture. It's a nice bit of texture, and also for me it's what the painting is about in a kind of emotive sense, you know, where the ideas came from, what I think it's going to be about and where it's going to. I mean, I always quite enjoy colour, so this is quite a soft natural colour, which is alluding to the actual piece that it is, and then I enjoy the primary colour facets as well. This piece is called The Backpacker. It's from a new series. I'm calling it the commemorative series, as in the commemorative plates that you'll find hanging on the walls from a kind of 1950s era. A lot of the work I do kind of comes from that 1950s era of post-colonial, newly identified New Zealand culture, which is kind of a combination of ethnic Maori and colonial English. So these are some of the themes that run through it. In the background here you've got a older Otago harbour, and obviously Captain James Cook sitting in a bus top. The backpacker reference that he is a tourist on the trail of sightseeing, which kind of ties in with the reference of touring the Pacific, finding the new land, etc. like that, which was ideally what a lot of the Europeans were doing, and there was a big rush to discover new properties.
Run to the place you know is home, come lately and alone. place you know is home.